Canberra Metalheads.
The Archives.
Me and You Season 2. Alright, let's kick it.
Hello and welcome to the show. You've got Marky Malphas
and JDecay
joining the studio, as we mentioned before, with the boys from Clarity of Chaos. From left to right, we've got
James Dome, vocalist, singer, and lyric writer, I suppose.
And Chris Farrant on bass.
Excellent. Good to have you boys in the studio. Going through the tracks from the new album. We've been able to play the whole album for everybody here on the show. So kicking it off, that's the first track from the album, Final Warning. I've seen you guys play that live a few times. Man, it kicks just as hard live as it does on the album. How do you find playing that one?
Yeah, it's still very new, very fresh sort of song. Like, we only sort of wrote that, you know, sort of coming into the studio period at the end of last year. And, brought it out the last four or five songs, 4 or 5 shows now, and it's actually been a real popular one. Everyone seems to like it and dig what we've done with it. And so, big horns up to everyone that's heard it.
No, it's definitely a fun one to play. It was the very last song we wrote. I think we just polished it off just before going into the studio.
Yeah, my lyrics even for that sort of came from a local fighter, Josh Tonga. He's a little world champion. He's an absolute classy dude in the ring. He's slowly racking it up and going to have a big bout coming up at the AIS, I think, in June, July. We've still yet to show him this one, because one of my former bands, we wrote a walkout song for him about 10 years ago when he first started off when he was 17 years old. And, still got to get his opinion on it and see whether he actually likes where the new wave has gone for it.
Cool, man. Well, it's definitely got some kick about it, so, I mean, that'll amp everybody up, I think, for sure.
Oh, look, it was fantastic to do. We tried to just keep pushing the drums up and up and up as much as we could until there was nowhere else to go. We just like that really, really nice drive. Have the kick drum so you can, if you turn it up at home, you can actually feel it sort of punching through you. And that was our main aim, I think, for where we were going and the direction of the album, was just to make it rock as hard as we could.
Awesome. So also you mentioned the squeal in there at the start with some of the Toby's squeals in that song. I know that if anyone follows the Facebook page for Canberra Metalheads, you'll see that I actually went down and watched you guys record some of that album. And it's just like getting everything perfect. What was it like with recording that?
Oh, look, it was always quite interesting, like new studio.
Well, we were new for Jack and Dave. They hadn't recorded a metal band before, so it was a big learning curve for them. Mm-hmm. They took on board everything we wanted to do, and we gave them a lot of guidance, but then we just let them loose and they developed their own knowledge and really pushed it. But they were very, very particular. Jack had a fantastic year. He would just pick up single notes that were off, and he would just say that again, do it again. He was very polite. I think you guys could do that just a little better. So,
getting it done.
He had a bit of quite a bit of I think he actually learned a bit out of what we brought in there as well. Like the band has a lot of experience in it, which we're very lucky to have. Darren Mead, our drummer, he's been doing one of the best drummers in Canberra for a good 20 odd years. You can't fault him at anything he does, whether it be cover shows or originals. He's just a monster on the drums. So, I've done a fair bit of recording as well for previous bands, and just to have someone else like David Pendragon to 40 years experience, and you just chat to someone like that and they'll just go, oh, look, I've got this idea, he gave us free rein in the studio to do what we want, but then as we slowly got the drums and everything all layered in, he would come to us with a bit more of where he wanted to go with it. So they definitely became, they were members of the band, and we couldn't have got that, what we got out of the album, without them being there and being basically treated as such, not just you're just producing, you're just pressing the record button, and to usually get no direction from someone in the studio is a horrible thing to do when you have to rely on yourselves and no one giving you the feedback there, and it was just constantly there.
That's good, man. Yeah, like I said, I watched some of the recording, and it was very inclusive of everybody, which is really cool. Yeah, that's cool, man. All right, so
as an amateur producer myself, man, I love that stuff. Having focus and being able to be pushed in different directions that you never thought of, and having extra ideas and just like building up on it. It's always great, isn't it?
Oh, look, yeah, especially with even bands that you meet, and the more people you come in and you do stuff for, they take you into directions that you never thought. You walked in there probably with an idea of how you're going to do an album, and then the guy recording it can just be half a sentence that he says that really hits home to you, and it can really change an entire album and the final product too. So,
yeah, absolutely. First album to come out with you boys. We've got James and Kris in the studio today to talk a little bit more about the album. Those 3 tracks there, good hard-hitting section there. I mentioned that I liked the intro to Release from Agony with the drum start off there. We were having a bit more of a chat about the dynamics behind the songs. What's it like with writing that sort of those sort of tracks? You said that Darren's got a lot of input towards the composure of how everything goes together.
I think a lot of our songs sort of start with Tim and Toby coming to us with ideas and with their riffs, and we're trying to figure it out. But Darren has this unique ability that he'll take on board everything that's presented to him, and then he'll just deconstruct it and just twist it around and reorganise it, and we'll just do that continuously until we've got something that's more or less refined, and then it just becomes that natural organic evolution of a song when you've got to that 80-90% sort of level.
Yeah, well, Darren initially didn't even have the drums right at the start of that song. I think it was just started with Tim on guitar, and then he came in and it was just, he come up with this middle bit where it just broke right down, and Darren just started playing these drums in there, and then sort of halfway through it, it's like, no, we should do that from the beginning, and so it just carries through in and out through the song, rather, it's just sort of like a chorus, I suppose, in a way, with Darren on the drums. Like, he just brings that extra element that makes the drums sing through the music of what we do, and it's usually people think of drums as maybe a backing element these days, and you're finding that even with recording albums, the vocals are just like, pop production, push so far forward. But then as the recording goes on, more instruments, guitars sort of come in. If you're actually listening really close to it, the drums sort of seem to get lost in a mix. So we sort of went around it the opposite way and just made the drums just as prominent as where the vocals should be sitting, and just that slight little bit forward, and metal bands have always been, guitars, like, look, we've got 2 fantastic and phenomenal guitarists in our band that work really well together, but all the elements are there just because of the recording and how crisp and sharp things can be. You capture that anyway without having to really go over the top on the recording element of things.
Yeah, man. No, that's like you mentioned before. It's just good to bring all the drums up. They're just as much of a centerpiece as all the other instruments, and also with the guitars. You've got, as you said, traditionally metal tends to be very heavy in the guitars. But yeah, there's some good inflections there where you can, like, the guitar comes out, shines through, and then the drums might step forward, and then like vocals come through. It's a good mix. Oh,
look, we had a lot of fun doing it, and then when even 3/4 of the way through the recording, getting stuff basically mastered as we were recording it, like they were going through and mixing and mastering it along the way rather than leaving it all to the end. And got to a point where we got pulled aside by David and Jack and just like, right, guys, you can't go any higher with the drums. You've actually pushed it that far. We can't actually go up any more volume, so you're going to actually have to start sort of pulling everything else back in the music, because every time we hear it, we're just like, no, want those kicks punching through more, want it more. But I think we were sort of greedy in a way by always wanting it louder. But we've basically got it to a point where the album, you put it in after anything aside from a big studio, just comes out, the level quality of it. We've basically gone as far as recording can go without getting into a big situation, which means big money, big dollars. And something that I'd sort of shy away from, because the smaller little studios these days, they've got so much. You can get so much different sound out of the little studios, and probably better quality these days. With the equipment that you can get, it's just amazing.
I think it's just that level of intimacy a smaller studio gives you that a much tighter relationship with the people you're working with to actually pull everything together to deliver what you want. I mean, when we've walked in with Dave and Jack, we said, our goal is to get as close as possible to our live sound and our live set, but we wanted to come across as a single audio unit, but we also wanted people to be able to sit there and pull out individual instruments. I'm a bassist, I like to focus on bass. Toby's a guitarist, he likes to focus on guitar. So we wanted to give those people, when they listen to the album, that opportunity to listen to it as a whole, but then also pull apart those individuals. And Jack and David just did a fantastic job in delivering that.
Yeah. No, like you mentioned before, during the tracks, their studio is called The Studio. So it was cool to actually go down and check out the studio and watch you guys record, and also see the expertise behind, and also all the mechanics behind an album. Like, that's the first time I've watched like a band record. I've seen bands jam and like all that sort of stuff, but that extra layer of like re-recording, retaking, changing levels, things like that, it definitely opens up the eyes to how much work goes into putting out an album, and the skill required to get to that level. The progression that I've seen from you guys, like since you started playing live to putting out an album, is like really, really rapid, and I think that has a lot to do with the level of experience in the band
and the amount of takes and the amount of like effort just to sort of go into the studio. You can't go in just, we're going into a studio, let's pay the money, get it done. Like, we really had to sort of practice, make sure everything worked right, and everything was structured right before we went in there. And you got 2-3 months before you actually even can say you're ready to go into a studio. You can't, if you go in there, you basically, without that sort of background behind you, you're wasting people's time, money, effort, everyone gets sort of, that's where bands sort of split up the most, you get them in a studio, and it can really fall apart really quick if you don't have things under control. Like, you want things to be as, we just went in there, we just set up, rocked it out, walked out, and someone pressed some buttons, and it's definitely not that. It is work, it is hard work.
And I mean, it's particularly hard for Toby and Tim being not only their first band, and it's actually their first recording. And they're phenomenal guitarists, but not having recorded before, it's a lot of pressure. But having the experience and background that we have with Darren, with Jamie, myself, with Dave, I think it made it a lot easier for those guys to transition into that environment, and just to help them to relax so they could then focus on playing and not have on the back of their mind, I'm recording. It just made them feel much more comfortable, and I think it allowed them to deliver a much better product.
Well, it was after the second day. It was just like Tim and Toby had basically learnt what can be done, what can't be done, drop-ins, things like that. I think the first two days, 2 full days, so it's like 16 hours worth of work. I think they deleted in the end and just redid it all. They're just like, now that we know where we're going. And but we were lucky with Dave and Jack by allowing us to have that time to do it, because they wanted the best product to shine through for what they're doing, because they're still, they're still reasonably new studio in the scene, and they're trying to diversify so much, because they do a whole lot more other than just recording. They do video stuff as well, and editing as well, video editing and things like that as well for sort of orchestras and other live things around town. So
Yeah, enough of my time goes into audio editing for, certain things like this and some of my other projects. I can't imagine the amount of time involved in video editing.
That's funny you mentioned that. that's sort of where we're going to go next. Like we're actually going to get them to shoot a video for us as well. But hopefully we don't have the bad luck. Like we started off and the recording was great, and then get a phone call from David. Studio's flooded. Like when you came in there, I think there was a vocal booth, and that's all gone. Like that ended up being that ended up being in the cupboard basically now. I had to rip the doors off that because it basically flooded through there. So carpet came up in between sort of what we were doing, and things had to get moved around and changed. It was lucky we already had all the drums and everything done, and it was only it was mainly just the guitaring and bass getting done at the time. So we were very lucky that everyone brought all their equipment home as well, and nothing was damaged in there. But it just took good 2-3 weeks out of what we were trying to do.
Yep.
It's probably a good little pause for us to have. Something very unexpected, but
actually, I did see that on social media as well, like some of the photos and things that just after it flooded. I'm like, man, that's just how it is, isn't it? Like, just expect something like that to come up midway through recording, force you to take a breather, I guess. But it seems like it all got sort of returned back all pretty well after that. So
it was a lot of work for Dave and Jack. I mean, I remember the first message that came through was like, guys, we've got bad news. The studio's flooded. Don't worry, the hard drives are all okay. The music's good. We're just going to take a couple of weeks to recarpet, relay everything.
Yeah.
They didn't have that much damage to their equipment, a little bit, but not much.
Yeah.
But their main concern was, obviously all the hard drives and everything to make sure they hadn't lost our stuff and all the other products that they had.
Oh, so they're doing 3 or 4 other bands as well.
Yeah.
Like they're very busy because we all got jobs, and so to try and get in on weekends where we've got available 2 shift workers in a band, trying to get those guys to just meet up at the right time, and so it was more of an in and out. We did, if we did it in a big block, could have done it, had 2 weeks and been done and dusted.
Smashed
whereas
it out,
it started at the dead end of October and didn't sort of get out until sort of towards mid-February, I think it was. So,
end of Feb.
So nearly 3 months. Get a bit tired of hearing the music by that time, but that's probably the hardest thing is having to constantly have ears to analyse what you do, because it's so easy to hear something back and go, oh, that's all right, without what am I concentrating on? Oh, shit, I was supposed to be listening to the bass, or I was supposed to be listening to the guitar.
Yep.
And you're there thinking about the next gig that's coming up. And you can just get sidetracked so easy. And especially when you spend so much time in one room.
Exactly, man. And you guys recorded that in some of the hotter months in summer, wasn't it, or around that time?
We started in December, went over the Christmas period, and plugged on through to the end of Feb.
Yeah, that's right. I think I remember when I got there, one of the boys' phone overheated while you're in the studio because it's waterproof. I walk up over the hill and down towards the studio, and he's washing his phone under a tap. He said, I'm just trying to cool it down.
Oh, yeah. And I think, Darren got in and out as quick as he could, so watch your own drummer, let alone any drummer, play 10 songs from start to finish. He did the whole album in 2 days. Did first take 6 hours, 10 tracks, and they were pretty much they were good enough to use for the entirety of the album. David turned around. It's like, right, boys, what are you doing tomorrow? It's like, nothing now. We're booked in for 2 days of drums. Darren said, well, let's come in tomorrow and do it again. You can see everyone sort of drop their shoulders a little bit. But I think there were 3 songs that we came out with from the second studio take that were just sort of look, there was nothing wrong with either of the takes. It was just one felt a little bit more natural than the first day. The studio could have actually gone ahead and said, right, drums are done. let's move to the next level.
I think Darren was glad, 2 solid days of nothing but drums. And, 10 tracks over and over again for 2 days. I think, once he'd finished that, he was out of there. He was happy.
Yeah, I didn't see him for 3 weeks. Just like, nah, see you later. I'm out. I'm gone. So
he needed that break. He was mentally just drained. He needed that break which was good because the boys are able to get in the guitars and start doing their stuff. He came back in with a fresh set of ears. No, don't like that. We need to fix this. So that was a good opportunity to get him to get some downtime and re-energise.
Oh, look, he was playing as well. He was doing all the Guns N' Roadkill shows, the bloody Motley Crue shows, even a bit of Michael Jackson in there as well. He was at the time when we did this, he was just busy in so many other different
elements
things.
As well,
like just being a drummer.
I think he did a Metallica night as well. Played the Metallica drums for one of the nights.
Yeah, and I think
around that same time.
I think he's got another one coming up soon as well. So he's got that, and we used to do the old Pantera nights for about 5-6 years. There's nothing much you can't throw in front of him. You just give him some jazz, give him some blue. He'll just rock it out, but he'll always be the first one to go, I don't know, I don't remember how this goes. And you just look at him and you're just like, you're going to nail it. And he just starts off and, he nails it, remembers everything, remembers all the changes better than everyone else. So I'd hate to be inside his brain in a way because he just knows there's so much different things are going on inside of there.
Oh man, dude's a machine. We'll kick off another block of tracks. This one here's got 3 more tracks from the album. Perfectly spaced album with 10 tracks there. We get to have one at the top and 3 blocks of 3. So
this it's sort of interesting to sort of see the way it's sort of set out here now, because it starts off with a sort of like a bit of an epic tale, and then comes into 2 more of the poppier side of the album before we sort of heavy it up and bring it back out. So hope you guys enjoy this little next 3, because it's got a bit of everything of what we all do in here.
Exactly, man. No, that's what I like to hear. Good display of everybody's talents. As we mentioned before in the show, we've got the guys from Clarity Chaos here in the studio to run through the tracks. This is a special edition of the show, going through all of the tracks from the album and giving a bit more of a breakdown on each track individually. As we were during the break there, we're chatting about the fade out on Reach Out there that you guys just heard. And we spoke earlier in the show about Darren's drumming. That fade out on the tracks there, this nice little slow outro there. Whose idea was it to put that in on the end?
That was a suggestion by Dave. Original idea was, the guitars and the bass will follow all the way through. We have that big crescendo at the end. And Dave said, look, guys, I've just got this idea. I just wanted, the drumming is just such a prevalent part of this song. I want to bring that to the fore. How about we fade the drums, fade the guitars and bass and everything out, and just finish with the drums on its own? And everyone's a bit dubious of it at first, but then, Dave's done his magic, and we had to listen to it, and just fell in love with the idea.
Yeah, it was a great thing to hear a song, a song fade out to drums. Like usually it start, you can have a drum starting it off, guitars tailing it out, or and then it was just do something a little bit different, something that people probably haven't heard before, and because it was a bit of a. We did it as an extended sort of end to sort of begin with, like to sort of build out the song a little bit more, and to sort of maybe bleed into another song straight away, or we were sort of unsure on. Yeah,
we did the extended ending on that. I think it's about 2 or 3 times longer than what we do live, because we weren't too sure how we wanted to end the song. But then, Dave had that idea and just took it into a new direction.
Yes.
Perfect, man. I feel like the way that you guys are open for the suggestions and things like that, it adds to the overall product, and and Dave as a producer being able to work with you guys to change up the sound obviously has some great results.
Oh, look, there's so many instrument swapping actually going on, especially between Tim and Toby. Like, egos were left at the door, and it was just, Tim would go to Toby, oh, geez, you play that section, you play more solid than me. Here, grab my guitar, you do it. And this was going backwards and forwards for a couple of days, and they're just passing their guitars set up for themselves, back and forwards between each other, and just going, no, you articulate that just it just sounds so much better when you do it. So it's not compromising. It was just everyone was just there for the best end product, you know. And you get some people that I've worked with in the past that are just like, no, that's my bit. That you're not even you commenting on it. It's even offending me, and it's like. People are going to hear things differently and understand things differently, and we're all different.
I think
So
the main drive we had is we wanted to put out the best thing we could as a band. And as Jamie said, you know, egos were left at the door. If someone could do something a fraction better, then that's what we did. Because it's we work as a unit, and it's bigger than the individual.
Oh, look, you know, I can't get up and do the whole James Dome experience out there. And, Christ, I can't play everything. I'm not an octopus. So
That's
it would be nice. But, you know, like, there's a couple of times where I've been asked by different people because they know that I play a bit of bass and play a bit of guitar. And, that, you know, it's very nice that they've asked me to come along and do things with them. But it's just like, no, I've got to have my main focus on my vocals, you know, like, 'cause that's where I'm probably the most comfortable, and I've pushed myself to be a singer and a vocalist because, suffered very badly from anxiety, public speaking, used to stammer quite a lot. I just forced myself into positions which made me basically pushed me out there and made myself do it, you know, rather than going, I've got these issues, you know. I actually confronted those and made them, you know, made it a really big wall to climb. But now that I've got there, it was only up until about 5-10 years ago that I stopped throwing up before I actually even went on stage because I get that nervous. And people you already, you know, have said to me, it's like, no, you come across so confident, you know. And it's like, no, a lot of people have a lot of different things to hide behind. There's not actually that many people that are that confident in getting up in front of a room full of people, and especially putting out original music. And it's even more killer when you actually get up there and, you know, covers nights. Like, you know, you're doing someone else's that everyone knows the lyrics to, or everyone knows exactly how that song begins and ends. So you expose yourself even more on those nights. So.
I mean, I've only ever known you as the front man for the bands, you know, like I wasn't around for Systematic. I mean, there's a bent, I think we spoke about this previously on the show, there's a bent cable tray at Transit Bar to show everybody, you know, how rowdy some of the sets can get.
Yeah, well, that was a fun night, you know. We were just basically at that point, the band was hitting its straps, you know. We just brought out our song Systematic at the time, and it's one of those songs, it's a metal song, but it's got a dance beat, you know, going through it. And you'd have people jumping around thinking it was sort of half hip-hop, half rap, half metal. And that night, I was basically hanging upside down off the cable tray at the roof until I felt it bloody sort of jag and pull down. But it was great because I had that many people in front of me. I couldn't have hit the floor if I tried. Like, I had a great support network that night, and most of them looked quite comfortable to lounge on. Actually, they were.
That's it, man. Like you said before, we got some experience in the band. I know that I've had you in on the show for Nights of the Spatchcock previously. First time you ever came on the show was from Nights, and then had you earlier with Clarity Chaos not long after you had first played. And over the duration of just how long I've been running Canberra Metalheads, I've seen you guys progress with Clarity Chaos, and I think that now you've sort of bedded your appearance as Clarity Chaos. I think that for a long time you were remembered as Nights of the Spatchcock. Before that you had Systematic, but now everyone knows that this is your new project and this is what you're doing.
Yeah, like 'cause when I first came in, like I said, with Nights, you know, that was just a short little entry into the rock and roll sort of side of things, and I think there was more to. There was another thing of my own, probably my own. You could say ego, I suppose. Just going, well, see a lot of rock and roll singers out there, and shit, I can do that. So, and it was just lucky that a band came around at the right time. With that sort of wealth of experience that I look for, you know, like with great musicians in it, always, I don't know where I found it, always with great guitarists. I've seemed to have stumbled across them nearly in every band I've had has had identifying really great guitarists that have sort of held up in quite high esteem in the whole local scene. So it was interesting to sort of go into the rock and roll sort of side of things, and then now getting back into the metal, basically something that I've been passionately doing for 20 odd years. So it's never don't think it's going to end, actually. So,
man, why should it? Such a good thing. And Kris, this is the first time I've had you on the show, but we've been buddies for years. I remember first seeing you with Reign of Terror previously, and you'd played bass with those guys for a long time. I
joined Reign of Terror back in 2004.
Yep.
They were my first band, and I think my first gig with them was the very night that Rock Ape closed. So that was a good introduction to playing live on stage.
So you were there. That was your first one.
That was my very first show. Yeah,
that was the first systematic show. So
yeah.
Oh, look at that.
So
I think reggae's the only original. I think I'm the second longest serving member.
Yep.
I took about 2015, 2016, I had to take a 12-month sabbatical. And then during that time, Jamie asked me to come across and listen to some of the scratch tracks he had for Clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And they just hooked me in. I think we played the first song, and I said, yeah, I'm in. He said, you sure? Well, I've got like 3 or 4 more tracks. Nope, you got me. It's good. And then that re-fired me up for Reign of Terror. But with a young family, trying to run 2 bands at the same time just wasn't doable.
Yeah.
Where I'd progressed musically and where my heart was with Clarity. So I stepped down from Reign, and by that stage we had Michael Arnold as second guitar, but he also plays bass.
Yep.
So he was able to fill in my spot there, which was quite lucky, because one of the first shows we were supposed to play together down the coast, I ended up in hospital with a kidney stone. So 2 days before the show, he learnt the entire set on bass to fill in.
Yeah, right.
And he could do the job. And so I just felt it was time to, I've left my legacy with that band, and it's just time to walk away and let that band develop. And it allowed me to focus more on Clarity to, as you said before, feel comfortable, develop that identity, and to move on.
Absolutely, man. Well, your time's not forgotten with Reign of Terror, and as well as I know that Michael's doing a really good job in the bass section as well, picking it all up and kicking it off. And like I said, man, the way that you fit into Clarity, it's best of both worlds. And I know that certain gigs I've seen you guys both playing on the same bill, which is cool. I think it was even mentioned one time, like the battle of the bands with like the Clarity, Chaos and Reign of Terror on the same bill, with
Clarity versus Terror.
The social media sparring, shall we say, between Reggae and myself with the cheesiest posters and new versus old. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's it, man. Well, I remember some of the early days of Reign of Terror. Lukey and I used to go to the basement and watch you guys play, and I knew Reggae, and I sort of didn't really know any other members, and I'm like, man, how hectic that like crazy looking Viking dude with the Warwick bass and the Labyrinth tattoo on his biceps going to be. And then once I get to know, it's just like, oh, he's just chilled, man. I thought he was going to be hectic, because it's just like up on the stage, you're like, that dude could just throwing around that massive bass, it'd take it out of you, like carrying that thing on stage. It's like
yeah, definitely. The Corvette's about 5.2 kilo of timber.
Yeah.
The Buzzard's about 4.8.
Yep.
And the Warwick's beautiful bass to play. Love playing them. But yeah, they're big slabs of timber. They don't move.
Yeah.
And when you're a 3-piece. And your vocalist is your lead guitarist, as the bass player, you've got to hold your bottom end, but you also got to, have that stage presence to keep everyone entertained, because you can't just stand there and do nothing.
Yep.
And the number of times I've woken up the next day after a show and just given myself whiplash.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I'm getting a bit too old for that now, but yeah.
Just dance around and starfish behind me, and the bass comes out here and there.
Yeah, I've got to watch that with the Nature Shock. It's a bit too pointy.
Yeah. Look, if you turn around, got a left-handed bass player and a right-handed guitarist, and you stand in between it sometimes. You just go, oh, for Christ, I could get impaled here pretty damn soon.
Yeah, man. So, like we said before, you're a left-hand bass player as well, which is cool to see on stage because you got two right guitars on either side and then bass in the middle floating between James and then occasionally over to one side. It adds to the aesthetic of the stage show. And also, the mentioned before that you got like the Warwick bass. Have you always played Warwick?
Warwick's, I picked up the Corvette as a second hand, and it was actually my second bass. So first one was an Ibanez. It was a right 5. So I did a Hendrix on it and flipped it over.
Yeah.
But the weight was all wrong.
Yeah.
It just kept neck diving, and the tone and volume controls were in the wrong spot. So as I was playing it, the tone would change and the volume would go down. So I did a couple shows like that and had enough. Went in, found this Warwick second hand, and just fell in love with them. Brought the Buzzard sight unseen. I said, this is the one I want. Got through Better Music and got that in. And then, so about every 5 or so years, I get the itch to buy a new bass. So that's when I found a guy in Germany who was selling off that Nature Shock, the Randy Rhoads Flying V, as a lefty 5. And the argument I made to the wife was I wanted to retire the Buzzard because Warwick don't make that anymore. And she's gone, but then you're going to replace it with this custom Flying V bass. Yes, and so but now I've got the itch to move on to something else. But that also coincides with a medical issue that I'm sort of dealing with. I've lost a bit of sensitivity in my hands and feet, and I need to move from a 35 scale neck down to a shorter scale neck, like a 31 or 32, just to try and be able to keep playing to the standard that we're playing at. The longer scale necks are just sort of a bit of an impact at the moment, but it's always interesting to try and do your best on stage when you can't feel your hands, you can't feel the strings, and I can't feel what's underneath my feet some shows. So that's why I'm a little bit more static on some shows than others.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a hard run for you actually the last 6 months. So, and it's hard to see when a band member is actually going through something like that, and the guitarists are sort of moving in such a way that they're moving in leaps and bounds, like technically and musically. And it's, you see Kris work through it, get one song down, and then they come in with another 3, and it's just settle down, but yeah, look, Kris has had this for a bit now, and it. But it's been fantastic. Like both Tim and Toby, they rally right behind Kris and just go, right, look, how can we do things differently? Can we maybe and everyone's sort of been working with it to sort of go, look, we can do this instead of this big long scale over here, and it's actually brought a bit of better songwriting, I think, to the band.
It has. It's trying to keep up with Tim and Toby's. It's a tall order. Yep. Both those boys are big. I'm sort of on the smaller scale of things. So trying to stretch across the fretboard to match what they're doing is hard enough to start with. But then, with this issue with the loss of the sensitivity and dexterity, we've had to rethink a few things and change the way I play, which, as Jamie said, it's just allowed us to do better songwriting. It's like, what can I do that complements and fits in with what the guitarists do without taking anything away from the song as a whole and add to it. So it's allowed us to explore a few different things.
Perfect, man. Well, it definitely doesn't show in the stage show. Don't pick up on that sort of stuff until you mention it, so it's not really slipping anything through the cracks, which is good to know. It's good to be able to have the ability to alterate the configuration so that everyone can still get the best out of it. We were talking in the break there about the long scream there that James does with Rise. Was it like a 21-second scream when you tried it out? Yeah,
we went and cut it down because it did go sort of through this whole sort of section, and I started it off as a bit of a joke, because the sound guy was turning around and looking at me when I was screaming, and I didn't quite get there, and I said, I've got to redo it. It's got to go for another 8 bars longer, and he sort of just turned back around, didn't really sort of take much notice of what I was saying until he actually pressed the record button again, and then I did it. But in the end, we ended up going with one quite a bit shorter. I think it only goes for about 12 seconds rather than 20.
Yeah, it's about half the time.
Yeah, because it really you sort of follow that, and it takes away a lot of what the musicianship that's going on behind it. The vocals, people sort of seem to focus in on that, and the reality of going, got to do this live, really did dig in.
Well, we played with a couple of options, keeping the original 21 seconds in there,
Yep.
then having it to fade out about the halfway point, or just going with the final scream that we went with.
Yep.
And again, the overall package was what we focused on, and
Yep.
the final, what we put in there as the final is what we were most happy with.
Excellent, man. So, as we mentioned before the break, you've got a gig coming up with Festival All Sorts on the
11th of May.
That's where you'll be dropping the physical release of this album. I've got a copy here ready to rock in the studio that we've been playing from. Got some pretty cool artwork, and I know that you guys have tried a bunch of different ideas for how you're going to do the art and all that sort of stuff. And I think finally when this came through, it was Kris that sorted it all out. Where did that all come from?
Many hours and many evenings of trying different things and different ideas. I think I ended up producing about 6 or 8 complete packages, so front art, rear art, inside, left and right, and CDs, and taking on board different ideas from what the other boys were saying, and trialing different things. One of the big drivers for me is the final song on the album, "Bring Back the Tide."
Yep.
And James had a really good idea, which I tried doing, which was a big tidal wave coming in, wiping out a city, and then listening to the lyrics of the songs, and not just "Bring Back the Tide," but the other songs. And I just happened to have a really nice photo, which I turned into the Kraken on the front, and tried to pull in some more sort of subtle references to the other tracks, and just build an entire basically an entire story, really. But then doing nice little things where the original artwork for the front and rear was a two-page spread.
Yep.
So if you look at the CD itself, you open it up, it covers right over unbroken, and I tried to do the same on the inside. But it was an evolution. I think I racked up about 800 odd images all up on the phone.
Yep.
Oh, look, we were seeing something pretty much every 3 or 4 days. Kris was coming up with something different, and look, we even ended up with a different logo for the band out of this as well. Like, because it'd been going, like, Kris had been likes to sort of tinker around on this sort of stuff a fair bit, and and we send sort of funny sort of images backwards and forwards as a band usually does, and on our little group chats that we all have, and it just it didn't come out of we've got to change our logo of what it used to be to it just sort of over a couple of weeks it just changed and evolved to something new. I think that came originally from a poster someone else did where they just whacked a logo that was similar to it.
Yeah, they had issues with the image we sent down for our earlier logo, so they just changed the font and came up with something simple. And I think I just filed that away in the back of my mind. During the recording process, I designed a couple other different logos which weren't going anywhere, so then I recalled this idea, that memory, and just tried a few different things. And same with the final artwork itself was an evolution where different elements were pulled from failed concepts and just reworked them into different ways until we got that final product that I was happy with, and then presenting it in such a way that the rest of the boys were happy with.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's exactly, it's come out really well, and I think it's a good reflection of all the tracks. We'll have to wrap it up with just some more information about printing of the CDs. There are printing.
Look, I went somewhere different to where I'd usually gone in the past. Usually gone with a couple of different places up in Sydney, and just through scouring around, I ended up going. We ended up going through Replicat down in Melbourne. I think they're based in Richmond down there, a little family business. Initially got their quote, and I nearly fell over backwards. Like, 'cause I was expecting nearly something twice as much to sort of come back cost wise, and I was sort of thinking, is this because I haven't done it printed up anything for 7 years or 8 years with a band, or then the more I sort of looked into them, they seem to be the one to go with. And we had a couple of issues sort of regarding just even, just getting our stuff formatted right, or in just dropping it into their templates that they had. And so, as soon as I got that back, me and Kris sort of linked up an email back together with them. And look, they were just wonderful to work with. And we sort of set a date, of the 19th of April. I'd like this product to be here good 3 weeks before we really need them. And look, everything they said they would do, they did. And even the packaging came up better than what I'd even thought, because it's sort of hard to sort of go, we'll go gloss, we'll go, we ended up just going a nice matte, and I think that sort of highlighted and made the artwork sort of pop a little bit better.
It does look good, yeah. I really like the matte on the purple for the front cover. Really gives, there's like obviously that Nautic feel to it. Obviously you're drawn from the influence of Bring Back the Tide as well. That
and Forgive and Forget, you know, like, because that's sort of more of an old sort of a Viking-y sort of song where, people were crossing the world to fight, like they were there to conquer worlds and, just take everything to make their own lives bigger and better. And so, there's a couple of concepts, I suppose, that go through the album with that as well, with The Other Side and Release from Agony, and, it's dealing with loss and death and, basically how people can make you feel. And it does sort of, the whole album sort of, it blended all well together, it's sort of, when I sort of look at it now as a lyricist and a songwriter, I sort of, it could have come out of one concept, this whole album, and I could nearly write a book about, with all of these things in it, and it would probably make sense.
Dude. The track listing and everything flows, like you said. You've got everyone's adequately represented throughout the entire album. It's a really good showpiece for your first album.
Oh, thank you.
So that one there, you can, as we mentioned before, is the physical album launch at the Basement on the 11th of May for Festival All Sorts.
Yep.
And also you've got a digital release as well.
That's right. 1st of May, digital release across 150 platforms, so all the major ones.
Yep.
So, Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, all those big ones. But the full listing, because we went through CD Baby.
Yeah, and they cover everything. So it was there's some hoops actually. You don't realise on how far or digital music and how big that format actually is. Like the amount of forms and things you have to fill in. And as soon as you think you're done, they send you back something else going, this now needs to get done.
Yep.
And then you send that back and, walk downstairs. Right, just done this, guys. Bang, another email. This is urgent. And now you're dealing with, taxation for America. And I'm like, oh, my God.
But I think dealing with someone like CD Baby, because they cover so many platforms where people can get the music from, is great, because a lot of people are creatures of habit. They will only go to one provider.
Yeah.
And the number of questions I've had from people saying, is it on this? Is it on that?
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, it is.
It's everywhere.
People like CD Baby, you don't have to think. You don't have to pick and choose.
Yeah.
So it gives you probably the widest coverage possible.
It'll be interesting to see whether we actually get anything back from it, apart from paying them a fee to do it all for us. Like, it's quite interesting, because this is, for me, it's always been always about the hard product. I've got cupboards full of CDs, like the wealth of just Canberra music that I actually have just in one buffet at home is unbelievable. And it's great because, look, things can crash, you can lose your phones, you can download this stuff as much as you want. But if you've actually got a physical product, and this is where I sort of a little bit old school in a way, I like to actually have something I can have in my hand. And if it does, if you lose your phone or whatever, you can always whack this on your computer and pop it on your new phone.
Exactly.
So it's been a whole new ground for me. And but you've got to be out there. You've got to be on these digital platforms to sort of to be heard and to be noticed, especially when you're coming from nowhere. You're not signed to a big label that's going to get you to all of these platforms as well.
No, I 100% agree with that. I'm about physicals. I know Jay's the same as well.
Big time.
And it's good to be able to see a physical product in front of us and be able to make it available for everyone else to purchase. So, like I said, I love my digital platforms, for when you're on the go and things like that. But I'm always going to also have a physical version of the album.
Well, I've actually just going through some records because I was just changing around a couple of rooms in the house, and I was spewing I didn't have this a couple of months ago because I found an old Voivod record, and it would have been, I think it was their second album that they ever released, and I was like, got this on vinyl, I would have actually loved to have been at the show and dropped it in front of the guys and go and sign this, because it would have been, shit, they wouldn't have seen that probably, since probably a couple of years after they'd done it. Probably, that sort of started to fade out already when all the CDs sort of started kicking in, and everyone got rid of vinyl for 10, 15 years, and now it's becoming a big resurgence again.
Yeah, but most things are still limited releases anyway. Even in the vinyl realm, most people are trying to do like minimum runs, and it's more of a collector's piece, and then they'll like re-release it with something different each time. And that gives a resale value to that piece because it becomes a piece in time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm loving the way that it's moving along.
Yeah, look, I loved it. As soon as I saw vinyl sort of coming back, and I was like, I'm glad I didn't get rid of it, like there's some of the sort of like the early Metallica albums, that were before repressing, and because a lot of these albums got a lot bigger than the bands themselves, and they lost a lot of control over, where it was going and how it was doing it, and there'll be something if we ever get to the point of having to repress these, we're definitely going to make a change in the cover. Or, there's going to be something on there that wasn't on the first one, which make the first 500 at least unique to the people that were there supporting the band right from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly, man. And I'm glad that, we're part of that original 500. I've seen you guys start from the beginning to now, which is really cool. And I can tell that trajectory of growth is only going to keep going with the release. So really good to have you on the show and, talk through the album. We've had you in here before, had James in here before with band before you had as many gigs under your belt and things like that. So it's good to be able to revisit it.
Oh, it's great to network, especially with Canberra Metalheads and, see you guys out and around a lot and known you guys for a fair few years now. And I've known Jay for about 20, we're laughing about a bit of what we do, with a bit of band whoring and getting in and, a couple of times we've both been in four or five bands at once, and we've known each other for many, many years, and it's sort of the thing that I think the whole scene as a whole is growing. To have actually our own metal station again, which we sort of, a lot of people had come and gone trying to do it in the past, and to have something that's sit and now growing, and see all the Canberra Metalhead T-shirts out there,
That's right.
so we've got our CD out now. We've already been thumbing around whether T-shirts, next thing, merchandise, it's all going to sort of keep growing, and I think Canberra's at that point where it's just an exceptional time where everything's just going to explode, and the quality of the music and bands, my God, Canberra's still got it.
Everyone's pushing everyone to get to that next level, man.
Absolutely.
That's the cool thing, and it's good to see like 20-year-old relationships still coming through. We've been all going out to shows and building the scene between our friends. You know what I mean? Like, it's good to see a good, clear trajectory that Canberra's taking.
Oh, look, and we keep pushing ourselves on, and the more of us that are still out there, still doing it, to inspire the younger, like there was a point where we were all the young new faces trying to get on all with these really big bands that were in Canberra, because that was the scene. Like, Canberra was the heavy metal platform for Australia. So we had some big shoes to sort of get into, and we all helped and groomed each other with some band put on a really kick-ass performance, and I was like, right, that's the level we've got to come out with
the
now.
New standard.
Yeah, and then it came with bands, like Templestowe and Eon Horus, I think they set a new standard in what a CD is supposed to, like
what your production can be from just being Canberra.
And
Absolutely.
so it's pushed the standard up really, really high, and so now all the bands, they all want to do that and emulate that, and they want to be the next ones doing it. And I think this is why we spent a lot of time on where we went and how we did it. Could have quite easily done it at home with the gear I've got, but I think we sourced out the right people and had the right people involved and the right people around us at the right time.
Absolutely, man.
Kick ass.
So you've been listening to a feature-length edition of the show where we've played Clarity of Chaos's first album, which is self-titled Clarity of Chaos. We're going to be closing up the show now with Bring Back the Tide. This one here is probably one of my favourites to see played live.
We love playing it. The response we get, it's usually our last song.
Yep.
So I usually have a bit of a call out at the end of it where I want people to come in and out like the Tide, with a few profanities thrown in there just for good measure. And you'll have to come to the show to hear that one, pumped out, because it's it's a bit tongue-in-cheek and you don't know whether you're going to get hit or bottles thrown at you or they're going to take it lightheartedly. So,
Well, I think that call-out started at Maria when we played down the coast.
Yeah.
That's the origin of that one.
So,
Well, you got to coin that Tide term on a coastal gig, so it's good to carry it through now to everywhere else. The Tide's carried from Maria right through to Canberra now. So.
It's taking over everything at the moment, so that's great.
All right, guys, it's been good having you on the show, and thanks for the repeat guest visit, and thank you for dropping the new album and letting us play it through.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thanks, Marky and Jay. It's been a pleasure, mate. Great.
Thank you for listening to the show. Signing out, you've been listening to Marky Malphas
And JDecay.
and until next time, keep it metal.
Skate.
Yaka, yaka, bam.